Okay, good morning. So we're working through the Hakdama of the Mishnah Berurah. This is the Hakdama to Chelek Gimel, a famous Hakdama. This is stressing the importance of Hilchos Shabbos. And what we did in part one yesterday was how Shabbos is really the foundation of Emunah, that it testifies that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world, etc. And what we're going to do today is, again, from the second column, the paragraph beginning V'gam tzorech l'das, to again explain the importance of Shabbos, and particularly the learning of Hilchos Shabbos. So it says the Mishnah Berurah, V'gam tzorech l'das, haramach mitzvahs shebateira. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given us 248 positive mitzvahs, shehitil Hashem yisbarach al adam l'zochram l'shomram, to keep and to remember, hu neged haramach evarim sheba'adam. That corresponds to the 248 limbs in a person. And now, think about it. Just like limbs in the guf, each one is different. There are those limbs which are not vital organs. The neshama is not tluya bohem. Kamoi hayad v'haregel v'chodeimer. If Rahman Islam, if someone loses an arm or a leg, even though it's a very terrible thing, he's considered in some form handicapped. He's a balmum, but he can still live. He just can't live. If he loses a head, or there's an opening of the heart which is meant to be closed, then that's a fatal loss. Kain hu gam kain b'inyoni mitzvahs Hashem yisbarach, and it's the same thing when it comes to mitzvahs. Shalem gam kain ksiv asher yaseh oisam ha'adam v'chai bohem v'nema ki hu chayecha v'rechamecha. So there are some mitzvahs which are more important, as it were, than other mitzvahs, and therefore they're more sort of fatal if they're not done. V'oid psukim harbe kohena ha'meirim lanu ki ikachai ha'nefesh la'olam haba tolu b'kiyum ha'torah. We know that the ikachai nefesh elam haba, the life in the world to come, is very much contingent upon kiyum ha'torah in this world. Yesh mitzvahs, and there are some mitzvahs shafiru im pasha ha'adam v'av aleihem, that a person violated them, hu nikra la'olam haba rak b'shem balmum. Well, similarly, in sort of to extend the analogy as we just started with, that if he doesn't keep those mitzvahs in the world to come, he'll be called a balmum. There's something missing. True, it's a terrible, eternal embarrassment for him. That devastation will be eternally ingrained in his soul, on the limb that he actually transgressed with. Al rotzen Hashem yisbarach. For example, if a person didn't put on tefillin, that if a person can keep all the mitzvahs but he didn't put on tefillin, then eternally he'll be a balmum in respect to Hilchos tefillin, and that will somehow appear on his hand. For nimsa kashiyakum leisatchia, and then for when it comes to tchias hamesim and he's resurrected, kol Yisrael yamdu chayim v'chayomim b'chol evarem. All the rest of the Jewish people can get up healthy and full of vitality. For hu yiyeh balmum biyad hasmoli hazel netzach, and because he didn't put on tefillin, there'll be an eternal blemish on his left hand. Because that's what's going to give a person life in the world to come. And the 248 mitzvahs correspond to the 248 limbs and give it sustenance. That's what it means. And since the person is sort of flippant with a certain mitzvah, it's not going to give life to that mitzvah, to that limb. A person will regret it. Everyone will see it. It'll be very evident that he rebelled against HaKadosh Baruch Hu in this particular mitzvah. On top of the next column, because everything will become very evident and visible publicly. ves mitzvos shmer ki zeh kol adam. V'rotz lema shemahari mitzvos asay u'shesot lavin, the 248 positive and 365 negative, shenishma adam b'mechayev yiboneh la'asit kol adam. That literally will build a person in the future. V'nimsa k'sheyokum v'yeh balmum be'eze eve or yiskalkel eze gid megidov. If something is missing, המכונים נגד שסול לאווין של התורה, יזבויננו הכל איזה מצווה עשה אליו עבר בשעות נפש. It will become quite clear which one of the assays he did not keep, or the 365 lois assays that he ignored. The klima yispal al dezel netzach, and it's very embarrassing eternally. V'yesh inyonim sheim neged harosh v'alev. Now there are some mitzvahs which correspond to the head and the heart, i.e., sheim ikachius nefesh hakdusha. They are the vital parts of life. Kamei emunas Hashem of v'seirasa. For example, emunah. That is like the head. That's an essential organ in Shmir Shabbos, and that's what he's getting at. And Shmir Shabbos is considered like a vital organ of a person, to gam ken yesod emunah, because it's ultimately the yesod of emunah. And if he's missing Shmir Shabbos, then he's missing, real chiyus in his nefesh going forward. And therefore he's living with his sort of low physical nefesh. And Rachman Son, this could end up in trouble regarding Tchias HaMesim. Okay, next paragraph. Another aspect of Shabbos, of Shmir Shabbos, is that a person all his sins will be forgiven. I don't want to keep Shabbos properly. Even if he's got sins like the Dor of Enosh, they are forgiven. Or ben Adam Yachazik Bo, Shemer Shabbos Mechaleloi v'Shemer Yodoi Me'asois Kol Ra. That's the pasuk in Novi. Al Tikri Mechaleloi Ele Mochel Loi. It is forgiven for him. Masha Omer Hilchosoi Mishum Sheyodua Sheyesh Lamites Avos Melachos. There are 39 Melachos. B'chol Av Kama v'Kama told us of Yerushalmi Perek Klal Godel Issa to Rabbi Yochanan Rish Lakish Diku Kol Kach. They found so many toldos, so many subcategories of the melachas. Ashimotzu b'chol av, Lamates told us. They found as many as 39 toldos for each av. So that's a lot of toldos, 39 times 39. You shouldn't mess up and violate Shabbos even in any detail. Next paragraph. How on earth can we keep so many details of Hilchos Shabbos? The tried and tested strategy is sheyir lezares es atzmai lilmod Hilchos Shabbos. Says the Orach Chaim, a person should be very motivated to learn Hilchos Shabbos, v'lachzor alei atomid, and to do constant chazara, constant reviewing, kadei sheyeda ha'osav ha'mutar, so he knows straight away what's mutar, what's osa. Dilav hochi, because otherwise, im lo yilmod kol inyanim ha'musarim ha'mazarzim. Sorry, afilu im yilmod kol inyanim ha'musarim ha'mazarzim nishmir Shabbos karoi lo yoloi. You can learn all musas for him about the importance of Shabbos and uchadis of medrash mishlei ladas chachma musa im yesh be'adam chachma hu ayachal limod musa v'im ein b'yadash adam chachma in yachal limod musa. What does that mean? I don't know Hilchos Shabbos. I can be very motivated to keep Shabbos, but I don't know how to. Because I just make mistakes. I think this is not also, this is okay. So what's Musa going to help me? So too with regards to Shabbos in particular. If a person doesn't realize that this is actually a malacha or a drabanan, it's not going to help you. Hadimin, I'll give you an example. All of a sudden there's a loss. Your animals suddenly flee on Shabbos. Your geese and your ducks, your chickens, are in your front yard, and they're recently purchased, and therefore they're not accustomed to domestic life, and they run away. It's very easy, without knowing the halachas of tzeda, of trapping animals, you're going to be over Isuri Deraisa. And also you could violate Amir La'akum. It's not allowed in this situation. And had you learned the halachas, you would know how to deal with that scenario. Whoever's going to help won't lose out. Or you tell the Nochri to do Seder Drabonon, i.e. to a large area where they're not properly trapped. Could go and buy a skull, they're not properly trapped yet. Where you can't reach the animal in one swoop, less bait Seder Deraisa, then there's no Issa of Seder Deraisa. So Amir La'akum in that situation would be okay. Or Derech Moshel, or another example. Shekar Shenidlika Amapa Shal Shulchan B'Shabbos. There's some sort of fire, your tablecloth catches fire on Shabbos. A person is very confused and he can't think straight when it comes to his own finances and his house is burning. You're talking where there's not sakonas nefashos, of course. You're talking you'll close down the fire without thinking. Because you don't know the correct way how to behave, what is allowed, what is not allowed. But says the Orach Chaim, if a person learns Hilchos Shabbos, he'll know how to deal with that situation. To extinguish the fire, he'll pour water on the parts of the tablecloth which is not yet, the fire hasn't reached, and that will extinguish it. Or you call the Nochri Lechabes to extinguish it. And when it comes to Beira, Motsu Ma'oid is very, very prevalent. People, through lack of knowledge, can slip up on Beira. You've got two types of meat in front of you, right? You want chicken, not beef, right? Something like that. And you want to take the other one or put it away for a later time. Issa gomu, that could be an issa deraisa. You got to take what you want now, and then the rest will just stay. That's okay. You take the cream, which is on top of the milk, but tzimtzum in very exact way. That is a proper issa of beira. You should leave a little bit with the milk, or take a bit of the milk with it. There are many details of beira. If you don't know Hilchos Shabbos, it's very easy to mess up on this. And some of them, many of them, they touch on Isurei Deraisa. But Prat B'inyan Bishul, and certainly regarding Bishul, V'Shehiyah, V'Atmona, and Bishul D'Rabbanan, He Hilchos Rabati Moed. It's a very large area of halacha. Bahar Bechilukei Dinim. Anogei Lamaisa. Ukvahed Bono Hagoyim Bala Urim Betumim Besifra Yaris Dvash Ki Ef Sheklab Mitzvah Sheinosa B'Issa Shabbos Im Lo Yilmod Kol Adin Mal Buriam Heitev Heitev. It's not shaykh to keep Shabbos properly unless you know the halachas. I know a fellow, a choshev person. He sat in yeshivas and kollel for many years, and he told me that probably until he started learning Hilchos Shabbos in his late 20s, he said he doubted he ever kept Shabbos once in his life. Okay, it was b'sheigeh, he wasn't, he didn't do it on purpose. He just didn't know the halachas. Unless you know them, how are you going to know them? Unless you learn them. V'hinei, the penultimate paragraph. One of the main reasons why people do not know Hilchos Shabbos, because just going through the Shulchan Aruch is very hard. Unless you've learned through Gemara Shabbos and Poskim, it's very hard to get clarity just from reading the Shulchan Aruch. And nowadays, who has time to do that huge effort of work? And aside from that, there are many chilukei deis. And like I said in my Hakdama to Chelek Aleph, that's why I'm stood up. I've taken upon myself, says the Orach Chaim, to explain all the halachas of Shabbos. Kol din v'din b'taimu v'nimuka b'gemara poskim. Gam yivua b'y maskonas ha'achreinim la'halacha, and therefore I'm also setting out all the conclusions. I'll call prat shenechlik b'poskim ha'koidimim. Whenever there's debates and machlekas, I will set out exactly what the halacha is. Gam b'kam mekomis ha'chamurin. And certainly in many serious places, Kamoi, Simon Reish Mem Gimel, Reish Mem Ches, Reish Mem Hey, Reish Mem Ches, Reish Mem Gimel, Reish Mem Dalet, Oid Harbe Harbe Simonim. Osisi Besicha Betchila. I've given a short intro to these Simonim Kadeshia Benekel Achakach Lahavin Dira Shulchan Aruch, so that we can explain and understand the Shulchan Aruch much more easily. Bekama Ovos Malachos Lokatti as Hashroshim Medira Rambam, and in many places I've taken from the Rambam, Moshar Rishonim and other Rishonim, Kadeshi Yeda Halacha Al Buria, so that we can explain the halacha clearly. Gam Kibatznu Boy Misifra Achronim Oid Kam Inyonim Chadoshim Tzuim Bezmaneinu Lemaisa, that we've put together from other Achronim to make it very practical. Now bear in mind, the Orach Chaim, he wrote this 100 years ago. It took I think 28 years to write the Mishnah Berurah from 1900 or so to the early 1920s. So it was a long work, and he wrote it with his son-in-law and others. It was of course the Orach Chaim who wrote it, but with effort. And this is dated already. So with Mitzvah Hashem, what we're going to do is, what the Dirshu notes do, is really makes it much more contemporary. So he talks about chickens and geese running away from your front yard. When was the last time that happened to you, right? But we'll try and make it as contemporary as possible. But it's interesting to note that he said that's what he did 100 years ago. But it's no one has the last word in halacha. Let's just do the last paragraph. That I hope very much that a person who learns what I've done here in this chelek, he'll come away knowing the halacha l'maisa. That every God-fearing person, it's appropriate to set up groups to learn Hilchos Shabbos, that we shouldn't slip in Hilchos Shabbos. Kadosh Baruch Hu says to Moshe, create large groups and be derish in front of them, berabim in public, Hilchos Shabbos. And Shmir Shabbos, keeping Shabbos properly, is what brings the Gula. If Klal Yisrael would have just kept 2 Shabbos, they would have been redeemed immediately, Shenema, etc. So there you go, a very powerful Hakdama, which I think sets us up nicely for Monday, Mr. Hashem, for Simon Reish and Beis.